Our next speaker is Rui Oliveira, and he's actually gonna kickstart the next part actually of our conference, which is all about aligning exploring customer pain points and growth opportunities in financial services. Rui has 10 years of extensive experience in capital markets. He's currently the CEO of the largest fixed income and private equity fund management business in Angola. It's called BFA. And now I will try to pronounce it in the correct way, Banco de Fomento Angola. Rui is actually extremely accomplished. He worked previously as head of markets at the Ministry of Finance. He worked with wealth management and Morgan Stanley and Citigroup, and is also a founding member and executive director of the Angola Securities Exchange. There is also a couple of other roles, but I'm afraid I don't have enough time to share all of those. He will speak about re-engineering Africa's economic transformation. And as usual, I kindly ask you to put your questions in the Q&A. And I hand it over to Rui. Who is muted?
Hi.
Hello. Hi. And sorry for the delay.
Hello. No, not at all. I was actually paying very close attention to the panelists as well. So let me just, not to take much more of anyone's time, share my screen here. And thank you for the wonderful introduction, by the way.
You're welcome. I also didn't share, your secrets that you wanted to be a physicist when you were younger, and your geekiness towards yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Sure. No, it's funny. I really thought I would be a nuclear physicist, but that never happened. So so now I'm here talking about technology. Here we go. All right. So look, so I'm from Angola, like how Fabiola said as well, and good afternoon, everyone. So today I want to really just sort of give a brief, or as much as possible, information on what really is the landscape of the continent economic transformation, and as well as sort of go through of what are the biggest transformation in the past 5-10 years. So let me just go for the first one. By the way, just one fact, I love that picture, the one to the left, that's my hometown. Yeah, just if everyone is asking. I was wondering. All right, so Africa definitely has a growth story to tell, all right? We've been growing tremendously in the past 10 years, as I said. And as you can see from this map, there's a great growth expansion since the past couple of years. So you have, and just by comparison of other emerging markets, Africa is actually has been growing a lot more than comparison to Latin America or other places in European countries. So about 4% of GDP between 2010 and 2019. Of course, 2020 was just a bad year. This growing, or this expansion of growth has been mainly driven by two very important things. So investment in infrastructure and pro-innovation in regards to regulation. These two main factors are the ones that actually it has been able to sustain this growth. You have other things such as obviously the growing population, and we'll get to that in just a minute, but these are the two very main factors. Now, what's interesting here is that these two also has driven another thing, which is the technology growth. And that technology growth essentially has really transformed how the continent looks at a lot of things related to whether it be payments or so the banking industry, the insurance industry, and then how the consumer as a whole also behaves. So it has driven a transformation in consumer behavior. There's a really interesting fact about, and this I just literally found out as well, that tech talent has been increased tremendously. Just in 2019, you have around, numbers say that you have around 700,000 developers in Africa. That in of itself is quite of an immense number of talent pool that you can look at in the continent. And this obviously then then drove the growth for startups and the fintech industry, which I'll also get. So as we all call it, the e-economy. So and just to give you a very brief overview of what's been going on in the continent and what's really are the predictions. So we're 1 billion people, or expected to be about 1.3 billion people. We are the 16 out of 26 fastest growing economies, and we're expecting to be increase even more by 40% in the next 50 years or so. In terms of, again, like I said, technology has been in the past part of the engine behind this growth, right? So you have a real big internet users, so around 600 million is expected to be by 2025. 31% today of all Africans live within 25 kilometers of internet connectivity, so that's also a big drive. And by 2025, we're also expecting that 360 million people are going to be using smartphones. And again, this sort of novelty has been captured really a lot of investments going into the continent as well. But this very sort of positive story hasn't had its setbacks. So, and most of these setbacks are based on a lot of things. Some will say cultural, some others will also mention there's a historic situation here. And the third, which I usually say that this is a myth, it's on, oh, Africa is a commodities place, right? You know, everything is in abundance, whether it be copper, you know, all the natural resources that you can think of. Just look at my country, for example. You have a lot of things. We have oil, we have diamonds, gold, and rivers running everywhere. But reality is the main factor that has been still hindering Africa's to become sort of the potential, or to achieve its potential to the fullest, it's actually based on this institutional voids. And that essentially is, you have a lot of gaps when it comes to institutionalized processes, and as well as firms and market players within different sectors of the economy. So I've drawn out this map, and by the way, you can check this out in one of my blogs. And it really is just essentially just looking at what the labor market is and what are the sort of the voids there in capital markets. For example, you have low sophistication of capital markets. So you don't see a lot of countries in Africa that have very fast growing capital markets transactions. You have two biggest ones where you have Nigeria and you have South Africa, but then you have a country like mine, for example, Angola, where we're still a very sort of nascent capital markets. We don't have any stocks listed. All we have today is just bond listed. So these things also hindered investments into the country and consequently growth as well. Social and political, that goes without saying. You know, there's still somewhat of a dynamic media and NGOs going on, but at the same time, democratic processes still need to evolve within the continent as well. Openness is a big thing as well. You know, you have countries, again, like Angola, that are very opaque. Information is not readily available. So it's quite hard to also understand the continent as a whole. And a lot of people need to really, you know, when you look at Africa, you got to understand that this is a continent that has more than 50 countries. So, and they all have, even within themselves, they have different ethnicities. So it's although it's a complex place, it's quite of also homogeneous in terms of how you find big opportunities. So so this is, to me at least, in my very big point of view, is it's a matter of these voids. These are the things that need to actually be tackled in order to achieve greater growth. So just going back to our big topic today, which is tech, you know, there's a growing hub in Africa. So you look at, and this map just really shows you have your incubators that are fast growing, about 47% just in the past 5 years. You have, in terms of co-working space today, is around 26%. And then you have other tech hubs on the 27th entire continent. You have a few places that are growing very fast, but then you have others that are essentially zero to none. You see it as Angola, for example, right? So these are small, very small hubs. So this also obviously it's another factor but it's still a great story to tell, because you have a lot of these tech hubs really have been able to excel in a lot of things. You have a country like Kenya, for example, that has been a model for Facebook to look at their payment infrastructure. Even Google has been looking at it, right? So so all of these things are quite interesting to look at. One of the big things for me personally is the fintech ecosystem in Africa. So, and as I said, the payment industry has been growing tremendously. And M-Pesa, I know there's a representative of M-Pesa today on the conference, which I'm very much looking into. You know, to also hear him speak, but you know, companies like have been growing tremendously and have been attracting capital, have also been able to sort of leapfrog even countries that are well developed, such as US and other European countries. You know, today in Kenya, for example, a lot of
a quick input. I turned off your camera, right? Because there was some internet issue.
Noteless, to be honest. A lot of people don't even use credit cards on their mobile phones, and these are not smartphones, just regular. They're Hello?
Hi.
Hi, I don't know what happened. I think.
So I turned off, well, everything we kind of have common is everybody has internet problems from time to time. I had turned off your camera, so you can go back to sharing. Hopefully that works a little better.
Okay, sure. Are we all back?
Yes.
Okay, great. So yeah, as I was saying, it's the fintech space is the fastest growing in terms of technology enhancements in the region. And sorry, let me see if I can. All right. Again, going back, what's the landscape in Africa? As you can see, there's a huge, you know, sort of an immense amount in terms of players in the continent. You have from your mobile operators to very sort of nascent markets such as Tala. They do microfinancing. Great company as well, and it's interesting that today, you know, a lot of these payment movements have been in the past. They've been very much gravitating towards remittance, but today is also around in the space of blockchain as well. So these are players that are coming in that are using blockchain technology to advance not only their capital markets transactions, but they're also using blockchain for secure, also in the payment space as well, and on the lending space. So they're using blockchain technology, for example, such as Tala, where they get information on the client in order to in order to lend. They do what they call a recognition of social social capital, and if depending on what your quote unquote social capital is, then they'll lend you they'll give you some micro lending as well. They'll provide you with that micro lending, and a great interesting space as well that has been growing is in agriculture, but I'll get to that as well. But yeah, this is just to give you what the landscape is today in terms of the fintech and banking industry. So what has been really driving this? I'm a financier, so obviously I'll talk about what the money sides of things. So a lot of it is public and private investment into these startups and projects that have been coming out. Numbers have shown that more than around $6 billion have been going into the continent just for VC and PE, or private equity and venture capital investments in the sector, just between 2015 and 2020. That's a huge number. If you look at, in other places as well, if you're comparing the continent to other emerging markets. So, as I was saying previously, you have, a bunch of other, sectors, but you have very specific sectors that are really being able to attract this capital. Software and system and services are one of the largest, if not the largest, where this capital is being allocated to. The other thing is, again, the financials. As I mentioned previously, you have the lending side of it, you have the banking, the micro lending. So these two sectors have been essentially the ones that have been sort of growing very much and taking all this capital. Just again, to give you another idea in terms of the numbers, so PE and VC have been growing around 62%, whereas previously, before 2015, it grew around 38%. So this is a huge jump as well in the past 5-10 years. I love this example because, so Hello Tractor is a company that is also, they're both in two spaces. So they're in the technology space, but they're in agriculture. So this is agri-tech happening in Africa. So what Hello Tractor does essentially, and what I call, the mechanization innovation. So in order to understand a little bit of what, what really they bring into the table, agriculture has been hampered by many other factors in Africa. And a lot of it is these smallholder farmers not being able to actually have access to credit. And a lot of it is because they don't have either enough collateral to present in order for them to be able to access that credit. And in other ways is their lack of management skills and also lack of and thirdly, is again, lack of capital itself. So Hello Tractor comes really in between that. So they're essentially, what you do as a smallholder, they lend you the tractor to the smallholder, and whoever owns the tractor has both a tracking device of the machine. Then they have sort of one way to digitally confirm or maintain, how the machine is well maintained. So they have a really sort of user-friendly way to manage the tractors. They have maintenance alerts, and one very interesting thing that they do is also they manage revenues in terms of whoever, again, the owner the tractor, but they also, on the side of whoever is getting the tractor, can also track and say, okay, in my area, who's really lending tractors where I can go and actually get one of these to then work on my land if I'm a smallholder farmer. So Hello Tractor is really interesting because of the space that they're getting into, which is the agri-tech space. So what the future really holds for Africa, right? I mean, we've talked about, really fast growing economy. There's fintech growth, there's agri-tech happening. But in the same time, you have growth that is being hampered by, or sort of limited by these institutional voids around different sectors or different segments of the economy. And the way that I see this is, look, Africa is a growing population type of economy. So you have, it's as the number shows, around 40% of the population in Africa are under the age of 18, and this number has just been growing exponentially almost every 5 years or so. So I wouldn't be surprised that the growth rate, or that the sort of birth rate is quite higher than this. As I said, it's expected to reach 1 billion people by 2055. So we can be the largest child population of all continents in just in the matter of 24 years or so. So this is huge, right? And it could happen in our lifetime, and so I think that's where really the growth is, and where the sort of, not just the growth story, but the investment story, the tech story is for that. Because young population, which means you have a young workforce, it means you have people willing to go into, become entrepreneurs, which means you have a space for education, you have space to increase, definitely a big factor into this. Just in terms of, just to give you just a sense of numbers, you have around, in 2030, it's projected to have 3.4 million of health workers needed in a whole continent. So this is obviously a big number as well. But another, just again, looking at this perspective from an economic perspective, in 2022, Africa is expected to grow very close to 5%. And this, as you can see from this graph here to your right, is actually quite higher, comparing to other economies, developing economies such as North America and Europe, and even Asia. Asia is expected to contract in the next couple of years. And obviously, these are all predictions, and we'll see. But reality is, Africa does have this, tremendous momentum, and if it continues to leapfrog in the spaces of technology, it can definitely reach the growth that is expected to reach. I just want to leave off with one very last thing, which is something that I'm very passionate about, is on sustainable. A lot of these things that we talk and have in technology enhancement cannot happen, health cannot happen, and education, if you don't have finances, if you don't have money pouring in into these segments. And I do believe that eventually Africa is going to be one of the key attractive economies where sustainable funds and ESG investors are going to really be looking at. Today, has hit record of $1.7 trillion in 2020. So and it's expected to be growing even more in an ESG investment, very closely related to natural resources and agriculture, by 81%. And natural resources and agriculture, that's what Africa is all about, right? So to me, that's where this capital eventually is going to be allocated. And you're happening where a few companies have already been going into more established economies in Africa, such as in Nigeria and South Africa, where some managers are already looking into sustainable finance within these two economies. So it's just, to me, it's just a matter of time that it will happen. So impact investment is definitely the key to all of this. And one very last thing is this whole thing is going to be, again, very much driven by finance and policy. So these two go together. I think the potential is just there. It's just a matter of us looking ahead and really being able to understand how the continent works and take advantage of that. And that's it. Thank you. I'm open for questions.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I can.
Great. So, Rui, thank you so much for all the insights into growth of African economy and so on. I would love for you to stick around so you can participate in our panel in a bit, and then we will have the opportunity to ask you some questions. And in the meantime, I would like to invite Jessica Reynoso, our next speaker, who is the head of digital innovation and client experience at MoraBanc in Andorra. And this is really a unicorn, I would say, today for us, because she is a Mexican living in Andorra and being really brave with the cold weather. But of course, on the professional side, Jessica is specialized in communication. She is in charge of leading the customer-centric and kind of like opening this digital mindset at MoraBanc. She's running digital innovation projects that are rooted in customer experience. And when we were talking, she told me that she's actually a really big believer in client experience as being the guide and driver for innovation. So without further ado, I would just give the word to you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen now, so you can see my presentation. Oh, 1 minute, I can find the presentation. Do you see my screen now?
Yes.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much. As Fabiola well put it, I'm a truly believer in putting the client at the center, and also in designing everything, every process, every touch point, having them into account, putting them in the central part of the equation. So what I'm going to do today is just to share some thoughts, some in-chain thoughts about what design thinking and agile methodologies can bring today in a scenario like the one we are facing with uncertainty. Because for all of us who work in digital services, 2020 was unbelievable. You might thought that you were prepared to work in a fully digital model, but then we found that some things had to be prioritized. Some others that were in the scope had come to a reality, and we needed to accelerate and speed everything. So this was because it was an unknown situation for us as an industry, but also for the clients and for all the human race. For the first time, we were without the ability to have physical contact, to go out, to do things in a physical and traditional way. So if for those of us who were already in a very digitized phase of the services, it was dramatic, but not so much. But for others who didn't have all their services in remote, it could be a drama. So what we found is that we had to run. Everything had to be done quickly and effectively and without a precedent. So run as fast as your legs allow you to. And this was more or less what happened with all our digital services in 2020 for banks. Now that the madness have more or less stabilized, and that we are facing a new paradigm, a new and uncertain future, Now is the time to think what's going to happen, because we had our roadmap or digital roadmap, and we say, okay, but is that really relevant now? Because when I thought I had everything figured out, and then something happened and I wasn't that ready. So what should I be looking forward to? And this is why this is a great opportunity to rebuild, to rethink and reconsider everything we had as a priority in our digital agenda. Because we are facing a situation that has never been seen before. And of course, it will mean a change in the paradigm and a change in everything we've known so far. Financial services and banking especially come from a very traditional and very stable model that stood out for almost 200 years with no change, either in the experience or in the products and services. And then in the beginnings of the 21st century, financial services had to catch up with the rest of the sectors because clients were becoming more digital, and the experience economy was a thing, and clients were every time more interested in getting new experiences and new ways of doing things. So client experience became an important thing to take into account for financial institutions. And the tricky thing with client experience is that it does not only depend on you, because the main part of this experience is the expectation that the client has about your products, your services, and your whole brand. So it depends on something that's alien to you, and you only can predict or trying to predict what is your client expecting, so you can be up to that expectations and surpass the experience. And clients are aware that this is an experience economy. They evaluate brands not only by the products or services that they can provide, but also by the experience they get when they choose a brand. And they are willing to pay more if they have a great experience with a brand. So experience is something that clients are aware and that clients are experiencing and expecting. We have been working on this for some years. This is why behavioral analytics and data-driven solutions are so important, because that's the way we have found to personalize solutions, to anticipate feelings, to be there at the moment and remain at the top of mind of the clients when they are choosing amongst a lot of companies, brands, and services to satisfy a need. But the thing now is that we might have gone too far. 2020 made us all become digital, even though you wanted or you didn't want, as a company and as a person. And the thing is that we were going right into this, but now we might have think that things could change. We have been lacking human touch for so much time that maybe now is the time to become more human. So this is one of the main challenges now, how far to go in digital. And this is also why design thinking is very relevant, and it can bring a lot to the table to a situation like the one we are facing. And it's mainly because it starts with empathy. It works mainly with emotions, and through a process of ideation and simplification, it gives you an idea on which you can later build over or iterate and go back. It has been around for some years. It started in the 50s and the 1950s, and it worked mainly for design and architecture. But it has been rediscovered and it has become mainstream because it's a quite effective problem-solving technique. And it works with those situations that may not have a clear answer, that need a brainstorming, and that need to bring clarity in an uncertainty environment. So this is why it has become so relevant now. And as for agile, it is important also because what it brings is that it just cuts the everything into little pieces that can be delivered and consumable at the time almost. And it also lets you deliver value in a very short time period. So this and also the ability to iterate, to go back and restart, is something that has made agile so important and so relevant in the last 15 years for financial services too. And that combined with the design thinking process that can bring you the ideas and the way of prototype them, then agile can help you to put it into the field and start working with it. And also both share this ability to react in a fast and an effective way. And what I like most about both is this idea of not having a finished product. This idea of iterate, go back, pivot, because we have been thinking in a very strict way for a long time, thinking that all that we deliver has to be the final product, the definitive product. And both methodologies help you think on small pieces that can work and then also can evolve. And they have a very specific way of looking to failure or to something that has to be redone. So they bring a lot when we are dealing with uncertain times and unknown answer to maybe unknown yet problems. And this is why in an industry that is going towards customer first and simplicity, this kind of mindsets can help you to have insights and to continue with what you have been already working on. I mean, for the last 15 years or so, we have been trying to simplify things, to make them remote and digital, and we have been investing a lot in making these processes that might take weeks or months into a minute, and the localized process that can be done on a cell phone. But the reality of the processes is that this is before COVID. The client started the process or the onboarding or whatever in one channel and finished in another one. And this is why when COVID came, we were also desperate to do something because we might have the process digitized, but these gaps, these little spots that are making the clients go from one channel to the other were not solved. So we had to put an extra effort in here. And why does it happen? Well, I think this is part of the same process, because we have been switching from a process-centric approach, a new focus, to the user-centric approach. And we think that we have simplified the process, and we are working towards a lean, clear experience that can put the user at the center. And the thing here is that in the right image, I don't see the customer, the client at the center. At the center, there's the experience, and the client is like a layer of that experience. So we are really being, again, process-centric. We are taking the process in another way or in another form, in another view, but the process is still at the center. It's our need what's there, not the client's need. So this has been studied, this has happened, and there are a lot of ideas that can help you avoid these situations and go towards a really client-centric experience and processes. For example, there's the Malkovich bias, is one of the ones I like the most. This term was coined by Andrew Glossman, and it relates or talks about this this effect that you get when you design for yourself. If you think that everyone uses the technology or any other thing that you are designing the way you do, the only thing you are going to solve is your own problem, but no the problem of your client. And This term gets its name because of the movie Being John Malkovich. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's about a guy who finds a passage in a building that goes straight into the John Malkovich's, the actor's head. And he sees and hears everything that John Malkovich is doing at that time. So then he goes and finds John Malkovich and brings him to the passage. And when he gets into that portal, everyone he sees has his face. And the only thing they can say is Malkovich, Malkovich, Malkovich. So the morals of the story, or what the Malkovich bias refers to, is that if you are seeing things only through your eyes, the only thing you're going to see is yourself. This is why it's so important to work with your clients, but from the beginning, even before designing the product or the service. Because what we do is that we design the product or service, and then we call the clients and say, what do you think? And we get the opinion about that product or that design we did, and we just improve the design. But maybe that product or that service or that experience is not addressing the real issue or the real need, and there's a gap there, and someone is going to come and fill that gap. And we are so happy because we think that our product is client-centric when it's not. Perspective is everything when working with clients. We can be seeing the same thing, but if you don't put on the client side, you are never going to get the answer the client really needs. Design thinking works with a great process called client-centric discovery, where you put in your client's shoes and literally become your clients, so you can have this connection and find where the value needs to be created, where you are important for them and where you can bring something. And the thing now, right now, is that the clients are kind of divided. They want more and better digital services and digital tools, but at the same time, they want to be treated as a person. They don't want to be a number, a profile. I mean, we all do that. We have a CRM, we have great behavioral analytics tools, and we know everything about our clients, where they live, how much money they make, which products and services they have, who's their manager, etc. And we profile basing ourselves on this. But the thing they are expecting is to be treated and understood as a person. They want us and expect us to have an idea of what their life is, and how they think and how they feel. And they say, with reason, that financial institutions are the ones that know the most of them, because we know how they spend and how they prioritize their money, where they go on vacations. So they want us to move from this, to understand them as a real person and to address their needs in this way, which is so hard. If we start working with techniques that start with feelings, that take feelings and the client emotions to the movie, we are going to get a better result. There are a lot of techniques. It is not a waste of time to work this way. I've been called, I don't know, happy and hippie. And when I present this sometimes to people who is more in the operation side of the table, but believe me, this works. And this is also, this brings results to the P&L of the institution, because if clients feel better working with you, they are going to choose you. Because as we have been saying, and Rui was saying also before, there's always a gap. There's, when you design something and when you put it into production, there's always going to be a part of the need that you are not covering. And this gap, instead of just looking the other way and pretending that it's not there, you have to take it into account, because otherwise someone is going to come and fill that gap for you. This is what has been happening with financial services, and this is why there are neobanks and fintechs are doing a lot with our clients, because there's a gap there that we are not addressing. So when you take that gap into account, you will be able to empower your users and empower yourself. So to finish, I'm going to present you with a small case study. I'm not going to take you through the ropes of how we did it and which kind of methodologies we used or whatever. It's more about how, when you take into account these gaps and you work with friction and the situation that your client is presenting you, you can have great results, even if you are not investing a lot on, or you are not spending a lot of time on it. Every small gesture counts. As you can see, MoraBanc, we are not a huge bank. We are more or less a very small banking group, family owned. And so when we do something, we have to work always on a budget. And for small companies, it's really hard to keep the pace of technology. Our clients want more and more edgy things, and they want the latest solutions, and you have to work with what your budget allows you. This is, I know that most of you can identify with this situation. So when we started our digital transformation in 2015, we knew that we had to act wisely, because what was our full budget for the whole project might for a big player only be a small innovation or a small product development. So we had to be wise, and we decided that the only way of making this new platform relevant for our clients and to have a 5 or 7 years expectancy, life expectancy, was bringing the client to the center. So we took a client-centered approach to redesign the whole website, the new banking app, we didn't have one, and to redo the online banking platform. So this was a lot, more when the age average of our clients was over 50. So we knew that we weren't attracting the youngest clients because we were not digital enough. And also we knew that we wanted to keep our older clients with us. So the only way of doing that was working with the client from the very beginning, bringing them to all the processes, getting all the ideas from them, and testing with them too. But we knew that friction would be there. It was a lot to take in. So we decided to work with this friction and to bring this friction into the game and take something out of it. What we did is that we put a small searcher through all the platforms, this magnifying glass, Google style, where you only type something and you get an answer, either to go to that page or that process or that transaction, or also we made the FAQ section where you could find whatever you were looking for. So this was simple. It was a self-service that would help our clients to reduce the friction they were experiencing. Simple as that. What was behind was an NPL solution that would return the contents and scanned and learned, and then gave the most pertinent answer to the client. But we decided that we wanted to go further with this friction. And what came in one of our workshops was the idea of working with these insights that our clients were giving us, maybe without knowing that they were giving the insights, on what was missing or what wasn't so evident, or some usability that wasn't working. Because when you don't find something, is that something is not working, okay, from the design point of view. So we took these insights, we analyzed them from the tool, the software, and our client experience department started working with these insights to improve internal and maybe offline processes of the bank, but also the information we had through the whole 3 channels or maybe the branches, and to improve UX, to improve transactions, to improve the way we had designed the whole look and feel even. So this was a small gesture that helped us to get a lot of information to improve processes, services, contents, and then went back to the tool and gave better answers to the clients. This is a way of learning together. Clients were participating, clients were at the center, and we were working with what we knew would be there, which was this friction of changing so much stuff. What we got in only 1 year was a great improvement in information to all the channels. We knew where to prioritize the content creation. We improved our NPS for the digital channels. And also we had the consultations on telephone and email decreased because clients were self-serviced, and it was great. Also, our client experience staff found new ways of having information, new and cheap ways to have new information about clients and what clients were lacking. So simple as that, cheap. And actually here, the most expensive thing was the software, which is not really that expensive. And now our clients use it as if it was Google. They just put things there and go straight into the answer. And I want to leave with this last thought. This last piece of advice, which is always find ways to work smarter with what you have. This guy, he's David Aguilar. He is the son of one of our branch managers. And he was born without an arm because of a congenital condition. And he was bullied his whole life as a schoolboy. And when he was 9, he was bullied by a girl he really liked. So he went back home, heartbroken, and started building a prosthetic arm out of his Lego pieces, out of his toys. By the age 14, he already had developed 4 models, fully functional models, made all by himself, that each model accomplished a different, helped him accomplish a different task. So he made a YouTube channel to explain and show how to build these models and to share it with other people. He became really famous. He was everywhere, Popular Mechanics, every TV channel in Spain, in France, some in Germany, in the United States. And actually this photograph is from National Geographic. And he worked with MIT. He has been working with some other technology institutes and universities towards Europe. And he's studying biomechanics and even won the reality Lego Masters in France. So work smarter, get what you have and use it in your favor. It doesn't matter your size. It doesn't matter which your conditions are. What's interesting here is how you use it and how creative you are with them. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. A super inspiring presentation, and really like the last case, really, wow. Thank you, Jessica is going to stick with us a little bit more because now we're going to start a panel that's going to be led by Joanna Bacchus, who's also a managing partner of Frontera. And to this panel, I would like to invite 2 other panelists, except for Jessica and Rui, who's been presenting before her. One of them is Altyn Sincheva. She's the vice president at NatWest for Markets Digital team. She's based in London. And she is right now focused on product innovation, responsible for building new innovative currency and cross-border payments technology solutions for corporate and institutional clients. She is also responsible for growing the business via partnership and sales. And I think it's also clear that she has been born for the job because she also shared with me that her name means gold in the Kazakh language. On the other hand, we have Istvan Szokonya. He is representing NN, so Nationale Nederlanden insurance company with their headquarters in Amsterdam in Holland. NN is present in 20 countries in Europe and as well in Japan, has almost 200 years of insurance experience. And Istvan is currently the innovation lead at NN Group. And he is responsible for the innovation framework of NN called NN Innovation Method, which is a combination of design thinking, of lean and on agile. And Istvan basically makes sure that the teams know how to use it no matter what proposition they're working on, big or small. So I would hand it over to Joanna and welcome Altyn, welcome Istvan, and have fun.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I could hear you well, Joanna.
Okay, so first of all, thank you very much for making the time. I think we've been talking for the better part of the morning about organizational change. And what I would like to focus this panel on is the beginning of things, which is the customer. So what I want to focus on in discussing with you and gathering your insights is what role does this entire process of discovery look like so that you can come up with better and more successful products. I would actually start with Jessica. If I might ask you a question, you raised a very interesting point, which is that you have a lot of data on your hands. But I think what you touched upon is how do you turn data into insight? And you talked about the design thinking methodology and so forth. What is your opinion about over-reliance on data versus insight?
Yes, this is a great question because we are swimming in data. We have feedback from every action the client does. And we have to choose our battles. I think here is to be, the answer relies more on every company and know where they want to add value. That's where you are going to find the data you really have to take and make something out of it. But there are also everyday opportunities on using small data to improve small processes that may touch only a few handful of clients. But this is important too, because these clients have to deal with you. So it was more, for me, when we decide how to use data, we always start thinking on the client, always. It's not how many clients this improvement or this idea is going to affect, but how great is that improvement that this data will help us accomplish.
Yeah, I think that's actually because companies are very reliant right now on big data. And like I said, turning data into insight is kind of like a human endeavor, right? You can't put things into a computer and expect them to give you these magical insights. Altyn, I just wanted to ask you a little bit. You're in charge of product development in highly sophisticated financial services. How has, let's say, your way of doing business changed over the last couple of years? Because we talked a little bit about defining customer experience and talking with customers first and getting insights before you develop products. Is there something that has fundamentally shifted in your company? Is this a new mindset? Are you using any kind of new tools? Is there a different perspective within your company or within your job per se of how you actually go into product development?
No, absolutely. Hi, everyone. Just to let you know what NatWest is, just so people know. So NatWest is the UK bank, so I work in the investment banking division. And majority of times I work with corporates and commercial and business clients. So it's slightly different, I guess, from retail clients that Jessica was referring to. I guess going back on what's changed, John, I think the thing is it's a big organization, right? So it's a group. So the customer can have several touch points. It could be wealth business, it could be retail business, it could be corporate business, and it could be investment banking business, right? But for client, we're just one bank. The thing that has changed is actually customer centricity. I mean, and it hasn't changed fully yet. I think we talked about customer centricity and it feels like such an obvious thing. But when you're in a big machine that is so oiled up and it's been working for so many years, it's very it's very actually easy to forget about the client. And I think what's have been happening lately is, of course, I work in a currency and cross-border payments business, and you start seeing newcomers, right? Newcomers like Revolut, like TransferWise. You start looking at your KPIs, and your KPIs looking a bit different. You having less customers using the service. And it doesn't happen overnight, by the way. It happens slowly, right? Which is why people don't see it. There's a point where I think it happened already in our organization where we've just realized, oh, okay, we're going to start looking at developing our service and adding more solutions to what we have, so our existing clients stay with us and we actually can grow. And I think the biggest thing is the mindset that's been changing. Let's think about the customers first. Let's understand what customers are going through, because most of the times it's a discussion with sales guys who are obviously really clear on customer demands and what they want. You've got product guys who kind of keep saying, actually, we can't do it. You've got compliance saying, you can't do it. You've got regulatory people who say, you can't do it. So there's more people who say, I can't do it because X, Y, Z. And there's one salesperson who's saying, client wants it. But it's changing the mindset of the rest of the organization. I think that's what's been changing quite a lot. And actually, it makes a big difference, especially for me when I kind of I oversee the whole process, and you start seeing this, your job becomes a lot easier and I would say more enjoyable. But I would say it's the mindset that's the biggest thing, and there's still some more work to do on big organizations, I would say, in general.
Yeah. I remember like a few years ago, I was when I was still in advertising, and I was pitching for a big bank client, and I was literally like sitting with the board. And we kind of like showed them trends about how customer needs were emerging and how things were changing a little bit and how they need to change their mindset in terms of products and services that they deliver. And they actually told me, you know what, fuck the client, they're going to need us no matter what. And this was like, you know, this really wasn't such a long time ago. And I think that like, I was also working on a bank client in Greece when Greece was going through capital controls. And suddenly people became very innovative. Everybody got a Revolut card. Everybody got an N26, and their expectations about what banking was totally shifted. And then like, you know, then the banks were trying to catch up really quickly in terms of managing how expectations are liquid. You will compare things not with your direct competitor, you will compare things with your next best experience. Rui, I just wanted to ask you something because Jessica was talking about digitalization, and I think Altyn also was. And I think like in Western Europe, we're trying, especially in the financial services industry, we're trying to kind of like create new digital products and so forth. What is it about Africa that it was so intuitive for companies to simply meet needs? Right? So you don't have a lot of retail branches. You need kind of like new financial solutions. Why was it like such a no-brainer to come up with really good solutions in the financial sector for people? Is it because like the companies were just a little bit smarter than we are over here in the West, or a little bit more intuitive, a little bit more insightful? Because I think that's an amazing example where we're trying to like accelerate digitalization or whatever, where in Africa it just became a kind of like a benchmark for the financial industry.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think mainly what drove and what's still driving is that you have a lot of rural places, right? You have countries like Kenya, for example, you know, the brick and mortar type of model just wouldn't work. You know, the banking service just would not be able, and still not able, to service the entire population. You know, if they want, you know, they wouldn't be able to put a branch, let's say, in the middle of, you know, nowhere, right? It's just impossible. You don't have the telecommunication framework. You most of the times you don't even have access to the communities. And this is me literally saying, as in, you don't have roads to give you access to the communities. So, and what's happening is, yeah, you don't have a branch, but a lot of these people have a cell phone. right? So most of them, although they don't have a bank account, they have a cell phone. And that's what's really driving this thing, is that the telecoms all of a sudden realize, wait, hold on, we can actually excel. Because who drove this wasn't the banking sector. That's another thing. It wasn't really the financiers that drove the process. It was telecoms. It was just sort of regular entrepreneurs. These are the guys that are really advancing this thing. The banking sector itself is still very traditional. They're still trying to sort of give the same, still the main product that they, that they try to sell. And then a few of them also go into alternative investment management type of businesses models. But that's really what's driving it, is the need to service that client, that person that is in the middle. I want to be able. The other thing is, for example, I had my great-grandmother, this is real story, she didn't want to move to the city. And she decided she just really wanted to live, where she've always lived, close to almost the wilderness, at least to my eyes, right? But not to her, it was her environment, but she needed cash, right, on a monthly basis. So, I've seen, at the time when she was still alive, my father, my uncles, they had to send money to her somehow. And that somehow meant putting yourself in a car and driving, I don't know how many miles to go in and sort of support her. So what if, and that was the main question, what if you can find a way to send money without having to drive those miles away? You want to send money to your great-grandmother, but she doesn't have a bank account, but she has a cell phone, and that's how it all happened. And then, and I think that's how M-Pesa happened, really. It was all a matter of, look, it started with remittance, right? The whole sending money. It was mainly first within the country, but then it was also about remittance outside of the country. But it started mainly internally. So I need to send money, to my great-grandmother that is somewhere in a farmland or something. She doesn't have a bank account. She has a cell phone, and she has access to maybe a small shop. And that small shop can become an agent, a payment agent, right? And that's how it's happening. That's how the growth is happening here, at least in the payment sector, right?
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting perspective, where your competition is not necessarily your competition. It's coming from completely another industry that taps into an insight. Jessica, if I might ask you, and then follow up with Istvan, what have your experiences been with implementing design thinking inside your company?
It had been harsh. Not an easy process, because we are a very traditional bank. It was following traditional models, and most of the clients come from private banking. So retail services is the local industry, but the local market, but it's not the main P&L of the bank. So we had to be very careful. I have heard that expression that you just heard from a company we're presenting. I've heard it in a not so harsh way, but I also heard, well, what about the client? What's the problem? I'm proposing you a new card, but the client, I want to know what the client thinks about the card. So it has been hard, but we've had the way of doing this has been working agile. Agile came first, and then client-centric came afterwards, which is weird. It usually comes the other way, but here, since we relied on our technical department so much to do the transformation, they started to get into the loop, the innovation loop, and they started to discover client-centric, and then seeing that things that work and start that way work better than the things that don't, has kind of put everyone into the wagon of client-centric. So we are not totally yet there, but we are in a good track.
In a good track. It doesn't sound so crazy to start with the customer first, and yet many organizations are simply not designed that way. Yeah. I remember working with a client a couple of years ago where I just like, let's use insights to develop products. And they were like, oh my God, that's crazy. But Istvan, I know that NN is using also a combination of methodologies to actually implement innovation and new ideas. Can you tell us a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, of course, indeed. Good afternoon, welcome everyone. But maybe to answer this question, it would help if I share with you how I see the big picture in terms of customer centricity and innovation when it comes to the financial sector, really briefly. Actually, a couple of weeks ago, McKinsey published a very great interview with Marcus Wark, who is a professor of service design at the Institute of Service Design in Hamburg. And I found his thoughts super sharp and relevant for the Dutch market and also for today's conversation. So basically what he says and what we see these days is that the traditional financial industry borders started to blur, and there are more and more ecosystems that are gaining traction. And what it means is that sometimes external, not necessarily financial industry players start offering banking and insurance products directly to their customer base.
Yeah, like he was talking about with
yes,
the in Africa.
Yes, exactly. And at the same time, we also see that that many banks and insurance companies also start to provide a broader range of services to their clients. And they can be data-related services on mobility or healthcare-related services, prescriptions, consultations, self-management tools in case of home issues or car issues. And what we see that these extra services can be good additional services, of course, for the company to get leads, increase customer loyalty, reduce claims. But at the same time, most importantly, to create value for the customer and to help the company step into new value pools. And what I see is that by creating such traditional non-financial services, your overall view as a company changes. And we know that, financial companies tend to focus on selling financial products for people looking for financial services. And the challenge is to how to embrace this value dominant logic. So what is the value that we are creating for the customer? How does it add to the company's purpose? And what does it do to the society? And I think that the large organizations need to learn and define and help the colleagues with figuring it out. And I think that is where a methodology which is chosen can help, because if you work in an organization where you had a certain way of working for years, then you will need to, as you usually say, Joanna, you need to unlearn things so that you can embrace a new way of working. So basically you need a mindset shift from selling products to selling services, or offering services to solving problems, which require a culture and the skills changes as well. And I see on the market, and including ourselves as well as NN Group, is that multiple organizations create their own way of methodology for innovation. Usually it's centered around design thinking. So starting with the customer, starting with the customer's problem, and then trying to come up with a solution that's feasible within the framework of the company, and that's also solves the problem of the given client base. And referring back to some parts of the earlier conversation, what I feel, or what I see as something that it's important to emphasize, that the competitors that financial institutions and services might have are not necessarily other financial institutions. Or to put it differently, the benchmark is shifting, because there's no such a thing that, there's one Uber customer, Amazon customer, and then we have our own banking and insurance customers. So they are the same people, they are the same customers. And if they have a super well-designed service in Uber, or by buying something at Amazon, then they will expect the same from the financial institutions as well. And that's something that I see, as a big challenge.
Yeah, that's kind of like what we call liquid expectations.
Yep.
So you don't compare with the direct competitor. You compare things with your last best experience. So just like another project that I was just working on over the last couple of months, which was a telco project. Customers, especially during COVID, when everything went digital, they weren't comparing one telco to another. They were comparing their telco to Alibaba. Mm-hmm. Like, why can't you be that fast? Why can't you have that perfect experience? So I think that's a very important consideration for any kind of marketer or business person to have in mind, is that people do not compare you to your immediate competitor. Altyn.
If I just may add, I guess, Joanna, just the point that Istvan was making about going back to mindset, and I think it's so important, is banks are known to be like pretty, I would say, traditional salespeople. So they've got a product and they've got to push and shove the product into you until you like buy it, right? And I mean, I'm going to have to confess, I was one of those people and I feel ashamed. But honestly, actually, when you change your approach to customer conversations from sales to more, can I talk to you and find out what do you think about our service? And I just want to get a feedback from you, because we're thinking of building a new solution, new product, but I really would like to get your input. When you and in a way, I'm still trying to sell them a product, right? So the aim hasn't changed, but rephrasing the questions in this way has massively increased my uptake of meetings. And it's incredible because A, they feel like you're not pushing and you're not being aggressive. B, they feel valued. They feel like they're being listened to. C, they're actually very happy to give you that information. And I was quite surprised at first. People like voluntarily give the information, because actually the one thing that banks have, if clients don't want to leave you, they only leave you when they're desperate to go away and find Revoluts and TransferWise and so on. And especially for corporate clients, the whole infrastructure is so complex. Moving from one bank to another takes years. And I'm not joking, it takes years, right? So they will maximize opportunities speaking to you as much as they can before they move away either to another bank or to a fintech. So very practical thing. Sorry.
I think to kind of like, as a customer, to feel like you're being listened to. I've only fired a bank one time. It took them 6 months to replace my credit card. By the time that I got my credit card replaced, I was using another credit card, so they lost all of the fees. You know, it had like business impact. And then I took my mortgage out of there. I took everything. It's really painful to leave a bank because it's process, it's paperwork. It's not like selling your car or anything like that. But when you get really pissed off at one point, you will leave.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think actually our job is a lot easier. And I actually think the job is easier to get the feedback from clients. And data is one thing, of course, Jessica mentioned. Data in the corporate client base is still a very rare thing. It's like a gold thing that not many people have. And you kind of have to dig and dig, just like you have to dig for gold. And sometimes you don't find it. So the next best thing is just speak to clients, right? Because every single client's problem is actually the same. Like you speak to 10 clients and they'll say the same problem. And it's like, this is gold information that you can take and identify that gap that Rui and Jessica was talking about. It's that simple, I would say.
But that's the difference that an empathic approach makes when you are talking to or addressing the client as a person.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a kind of like a marketing basic here is like, you can create something and then spend a lot of money trying to market it, to sell it, or you can find out what people need and then build it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And actually a couple of the examples I have now, so I'm rolling out new product now, and I was worried about marketing and making people know. And actually, when you talk to clients, you get that feedback session. It's a feedback session, but ultimately you are oiling them up and massaging them up for the ultimate sale. And in a way, when you tell them, so are you happy to join that pilot? Once you relay whatever they said the problem is, and you relay back, because actually the idea that you had pretty much answers the client's needs, they're like, when can I sign up? I want to use it right now. This is your prospect identified and there to use it. It's incredible. Like I cracked it in the last, I would say, few months, and it was like an enigma moment for me. which is great.
So we have about 4 minutes to go because Fabiola is going to kick me off of the Zoom. I would like to ask all four of you, what would be the biggest challenges or the biggest opportunities that you're going to be facing in the next 12 months?
Altyn, you want to go first?
Oh, you're volunteering me.
Personal or professional?
Okay.
Good to see.
Rui, just like throwing me under the bus here. Okay. No, I think in terms of the
full disclosure, Rui and Altyn and I went to Oxford together last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's not targeted me specifically. He knows me from before. I think really the opportunities, I would say that gold information I find out from getting that full information from clients, identifying that gap is incredible, right? Because it's not just one problem that client faces. Unfortunately, client faces a lot of problems, but also it can give you an idea to find out that new next innovation, because most of the time banks have incremental innovation, right? It's changing the product slightly. But I think you get to the point, and we've learned this at our course at Oxford, that product becomes obsolete and it doesn't serve the purpose anymore. So you need to look for that long-term amazing product that is so different, but that can only be found by continuously speaking to clients. And I think this is where the opportunity lies. Keep having that conversation. Don't go back with clients selling one product and be like, okay, great, we've achieved our P&L and we're out of this. No. Go back to clients, speak to them, understand what they're facing. I think that's the great opportunity within banks. And as I said, clients don't want to voluntarily leave banks, which I think is the asset that banks have, and they don't realize it yet. The biggest challenge, and this is the challenge that I face, is the internal processes and agreements from taking that idea and actually building it and bringing it to action. And within the bank specifically, obviously, regulatory requirements are a massive thing. And a lot of people hide away behind, oh, regulation doesn't allow, it's not compliant. And the challenge is to build the process in a way that you cannot hide away from regulation. Regulation still allows you to innovate. You just need to find that particular gap and incentivize those teams, as I said. I think the biggest thing is incentivizing those teams that are in the process of product development to go with you on that journey. And I think that is the biggest challenge, at least for me in my job.
Yeah, kind of like challenging the obstacles because they're not always obstacles. Istvan, what is your 12-month plan?
Well, I think definitely a big challenge for the upcoming period of time on a personal level, to get back to society again and even to the social interactions. I don't really remember how they work anymore. Yeah, on a professional level, I would say to kind of match the increment or trying to find a bridge between incremental innovation and innovation, which is more on horizon 2 and 3 level. How can we show the true value of all levels of innovation for the overall organizations? Because I truly believe that connecting back to the conversation between Jorn and Jürgen, that if you work in silos, that's not sustainable in the long run. So, we don't really see a lot of good examples for that. And I think that's a constant challenge for anyone who works in innovation. Like, how do you connect it to the business of today? And if you have the good mindset, the right mindset, the good people who are working on long-term innovation projects, more on H2, H3 domains, then how can you pass on the mindset to the core business? How do you do that? How do you change that in a sustainable way? So that's definitely a good challenge for me.
Yeah, that's always a really good challenge between the performance engine and the intervention. Jessica, what are you up to for the next 12 months?
Oh, mine, personal and professional, are the same, which is find the right balance between being digital and being physical. Find where my comfort zone is there, and trying to lose this tunnel vision that you get after being closed out of the society, as Istvan said. And for me, what the example that I always have in mind with this is that the story about when the Cold War, where the space war, when Russia and United States were trying to get to the space. So Americans noticed that they would need something to write, and they started developing a very expensive pen that could work without gravity.
Oh yeah, it's a pencil solution.
And then Russians just took pencils. So this is what I want to achieve. I want to keep my feet grounded in what technology can do for me and what I really want, so I don't lose the human touch, the real human touch. And this is for both the professional and the personal.
And just kind of like common sense, right? So like the pencil was just common sense.
Yeah.
Rui, what are you and Rui, what are you going to be busy with?
Look, I find it interesting how Jessica is essentially saying, look, I need the human element in all of this, right? It doesn't matter what technology I'm using, you know, I still need that human element. I find it interesting because in my situation, I think I have two big goals. So today, there's a lot of still manual processes internally because we're coming from a legacy firm, right? Where our parent company is very much a traditional bank. So we're essentially the so-called sort of that we have to do the ambiguity, work around that, and really trying to be ambidextrous, if you may, on this. So two things will be really be able to do organizational assessment, and that through very much how to use systems and systematically really understand what's, you know, the problems within the firm, whether it be from a compliance type of situation, or whether just be really planning things out. There's a lot of things that are done very ad hoc within the firm, and so that's something that is really annoys me first and foremost, and second, really trying to get that mentality and within the teams. The very second thing is what Jessica was saying, the human element and how you put those two things together, technology and human element. So I have a huge problem with technology, again, because of the legacy that's coming. But we need sort of better systems, we need better technology. But I'm trying to find the best way to do that without having to sort of run away from what you're saying, Jessica, which is, look, I can't, let me not get, maybe I need a pencil in certain situations. Maybe I don't need that very advanced technology solution, right? So I need those two things to work together, and at the same time having that so-called engineering culture, right, where everyone sort of feels and they can have this very innovative mind way of thinking, and really be free to show up product innovation and really look at what are the things that they can set forth and really challenge the client. Because this is what's happening here in Africa, really. There's a lot of the point where demand is coming, is inchoate, right? Like as we learned in Oxford. So, at certain times, it's us actually creating the market. It's actually coming to the client and say, what if you do it this way, right? There's this way to do it. And then all of a sudden the client's like, oh my God, I've never seen it. So being able to be that innovative is key to me. And I think that's what I'm really trying to drive my team to think of and really push to the limit.
Dance like nobody's watching. That's the answer.
Dance like. So first of all, Altyn, Jessica, Istvan, and Rui, thank you very much for your time today. Thank you very much for your very eye-opening insights and a great conversation. And thank you once again for participating in this conference. I wish you a wonderful day. And again, I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having us on board.
Thank you for having us. This is great.
Thank
great
you.
Seeing
Our pleasure.
Altyn, take care.
Thank you.
Jessica.